Welcome back. Have you ever had to make a hard decision when you didn't have a good option? Not which job offer should I take kind of decision. I mean the kind where everything familiar starts to feel unstable and you realize that staying where you are could cost more than walking away. Because that's exactly where Ruth finds herself. A famine hits Bethlehem. A family packs up and leaves. Then, one by one, the people they were depending on are gone, and suddenly two widows are standing in a foreign land with no easy answers, no safety net, and no clear future. And if you're going through something like that right now, a job change, a move, financial pressure, burnout, grief, or just a strange feeling that life as you knew it is slipping away, you are in the right place. Here's where things get interesting. Ruth's story happens in the days when the judges ruled. That was a rough time in Israel's history. There was no king, no strong national center, and life was mostly local, rural, and fragile. Most people lived by farming or herding, which meant your whole survival depended on the weather, the harvest, and whether the land cooperated. This was not a world of backup plans. If the crops failed, people felt it immediately. If famine came, families had to make impossible choices. Bethlehem literally means house of bread. So the irony is painful. The place associated with provision had no bread. And for women, especially widows, life could get very vulnerable. In that culture, your security often depended on a husband, sons, or extended family. Without that support, you could fall into poverty very quickly. There were laws and customs to help the vulnerable, but day to day life still meant uncertainty and risk. Moab also mattered. It was not just the next town over, it was foreign territory across the Dead Sea with its own people, customs, and tensions with Israel. So, when Elimelech moves his family there, this isn't just a change of address, it's a survival move, it's displacement. It's leaving behind home, identity, and what was familiar because hunger had pushed them to the edge. Now, let's walk through the story itself. Naomi and her husband Elimelech leave Bethlehem with their two sons because there's no food. That alone is heavy. You can feel the fear in that decision. Nobody wants to say we have to leave unless staying has become unbearable. Then tragedy hits. Elimelech dies. The sons marry Moabite women, Orpah and Ruth, and for a moment, maybe Naomi thinks life is stabilizing again. Maybe she thinks we've survived the worst. But then both her sons die too. That's the part nobody tells you would hurt this much. Grief does not always arrive neatly. Sometimes it comes in waves. Sometimes it takes your future with it. Naomi is left with two daughters in law, both widowed, all of them exposed. No husband, no sons, no obvious provider, no guarantee of safety. In ancient terms, this is not just heartbreak, it is economic collapse. So Naomi hears that the famine in Judah has ended and she decides to go home. But her return is not a happy homecoming. It's the return of a woman who left full and is coming back empty. Along the road, she tells Orpah and Ruth to go back to their mothers' homes. In other words, I can't promise you a future with me. This is Naomi's heartbreaking reality. She's being honest with them. She knows what widowhood means. She knows what the road ahead looks like, and she believes she has nothing left to offer. Orpha leaves. No shame in that. Sometimes the hardest, wisest thing someone can do is go back to what's familiar. But Ruth stays. And here's the moment that changes everything. Ruth says, "Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God." This is not a sentimental line. That is a covenant level decision. Ruth is leaving behind her old life, her land, her security, and her old identity. She doesn't know how this ends. She just knows Naomi is not going alone. That's courage. Not the kind that feels fearless, the kind that walks forward while still carrying grief. So, how can we apply this biblical information today? Here's the first lesson. Sometimes faith looks like leaving the familiar before you feel ready. We love certainty. We want the roadmap, the job offer, the savings account, the investments, the confirmation email, the 5-year plan. But Ruth reminds us that God often meets people not after they have everything figured out, but while they're still in the season of transition. And that matters for modern life. If you're facing a career pivot, this story speaks to you. If you're burned out and wondering whether to quit, rest, or rebuild, this story speaks to you. If money feels tight and the future feels unstable, this story speaks to you. If you've been through loss and you're trying to trust again, this story speaks to you. Because leaving the familiar is not always rebellion. Sometimes it's obedience. Sometimes it's wisdom. Sometimes it's the only way forward. We love stories of miraculous arrivals, but we rarely talk about the painful departure. When Ruth leaves Moab, she is not just walking away from a place, she is walking toward a promise she cannot yet see. That is what faith often feels like. You move before the full picture appears. You trust while the story is still unfinished. You keep going, not because the road is easy, but because you believe God is already there. And there's another layer here too. Naomi thought she was empty, but God was quietly working through loyalty, ordinary travel, shared grief, and one brave decision. That means your small acts of faith are never wasted. A hard conversation, a new routine, a prayer in the car, asking for help, showing up when you are exhausted, those things matter more than you think. So if you're in a season where life feels uncertain, don't ignore the step you can take today. You may not be able to fix everything, but you can take the next faithful step. Maybe that means updating the resume. Maybe it means making the doctor's appointment. Maybe it means self-care without guilt. Maybe it means setting one small boundary. Ruth's single decision to stay with Naomi seems minor, but it altered everything. She refused to let her loss close her heart to what came next. So, as you move through your own unfamiliar season, remember this: God is not only present in the destination, He is present in the leaving, the grieving, the waiting, and the starting over. Ruth's story begins with loss, but it does not end there, and neither should yours. When you look at the entire arc of Ruth's life, you realize something remarkable. She couldn't see the harvest fields of Boaz yet. She couldn't see her loyalty to Naomi would eventually place her in the genealogy of King David and ultimately Jesus. All she had was the immediate choice to walk into the unknown. And that is where your story meets hers. You don't need to see the entire horizon to take the next faithful step. You just need the courage to leave behind what is holding you back. Trust the one who goes before you and believe that your hardest season is not the end of your story, but the beginning of a new chapter written by a God who redeems every single broken piece. We'll leave it there for today. Remember, you are deeply valued, and just like Ruth, every step of faith quietly builds a foundation for what comes next. See you next time.